Hello, welcome back to the Space Gulag. We're back with part 5 of 6 of the Earth series. Before we begin, special thanks to our patrons. If you want to go check out the Twitch, we are streaming daily now. Go check out the podcast. We got interviews coming up soon. Go check out the Pride of the Empire merch and the Broken One available until the end of this season. I'm so stoked for you guys to see the finale. This is going to be mind-blowing. Otherwise, our story continues on Earth, weeks after the Jade Insurgency. The people of Earth began to question their loyalty to the Emperor. While it wasn't the entirety of the planet, there was a solid portion of the population that was genuinely concerned with the consistent uprisings in the galaxy. First, it was a rebellion, and now it was a Jade Insurgency. Sure, there was a 2-decade gap in between those two insurgencies, but it felt like too many for the Empire to be dealing with in such a short period of time. The age of the High Republic didn't see this many insurgencies, other than those in the reaches of the Outer Rim on territorial colonized worlds, which that wasn't the case here. The rebellion threatened worlds across the Mid-Rim, and while the battle over the Death Star wasn't a publicly known incident, nor was the construction of the Death Star, the people of Earth found the Jade Insurgency something much more concerning. The reason the Jade Insurgency was so concerning was because of how close to home it could have hit. There was still visible debris over Earth in the waning weeks after the battle, and to the people of Earth, this was mildly concerning. They saw this as a sign of the peace they'd almost lost, as it was recently confirmed that Anaxis was a victim of the Jade Insurgency, rather than it being some sort of nebula that shut down the systems of the entire planet. The people of the galaxy were starting to question Palpatine. Sure, he was on his victory tour to build up morale, but Imperial morale was an all-time low. For the people of the Empire, they were concerned if it was their military forces, and if they would feel any desire to rebel again, especially being that the insurgency utilized Imperial technology a lot more than the rebellion itself did. On another note, the people of Earth were clearing up the mess above their system. It was a real shame because half of the vessels destroyed in orbit were produced by the Saturn drive yards, though most of the vessels destroyed were those that defended Earth, such as the Resurgent-class Star Destroyers that went toe-to-toe with the Supremacy. Grand Admiral Thrawn's fleet was still stationed over the planet of Earth, and Thrawn himself was spending the duration of his stay inside of the capital at Zenzal. He had visited several times before on many occasions, sometimes to meet with the Council of Earth and other times to inspect the troops coming out of the Zenzal academies, especially considering the academies based in Zenzal were now considered the best in the galaxy. Though Thrawn wasn't very noticeable, he was put up inside of a luxurious hotel and wasn't seen after he went in. He spent most of his time inside of the residence meditating and sleeping. The Jade Insurgency took a toll on him. He was no longer a younger man, and he too was trying to get to the bottom of why or how a rebellion from within the Empire ranks could so quickly turn against the Empire itself, especially someone as close to the Emperor as Mara Jade was. Thrawn didn't consider this questioning his loyalty to the Emperor. More so, he was trying to understand it, because it didn't make sense. Neither did Mara's strategy. Well, in a way it made sense because she targeted the drive yards, but she had visited Earth before. She knew how capable the planet was of defending its orbital self. Maybe she wasn't paying attention and she was too hungry going after a big fish when she could have seared a planet like Naboo or Bothawai. It was something Thrawn didn't really understand, but he stayed quiet, keeping his fleet stationed over Earth as a precaution ordered by the Emperor, to both keep the planet safe and help pick up the pieces. The population of Earth wasn't exactly divided, but talk of a new galactic leader was certainly present on the street level and even within the Imperial Academy at Zenzal. While the Imperials studying at the Academy were meant to be loyal to the Emperor, the entire ordeal was off-putting to them. On another note, the Council of Earth was beginning to take more focus into the Outer Rim. This was because of the failures of the core worlds to uphold their part of the bargain when it came to providing to Outer Rim worlds. Tatooine was built up almost essentially overnight, and most of the other planets in the Outer Rim were basically vacated, and Tatooine was becoming overpopulated because it was a tropical paradise now. now. The Council of Earth knew that something needed to be changed, or else they could be in serious trouble with Tatooine getting overly populated and having a macroeconomic issue. So the Council of Earth reached out to the Emperor's office on Coruscant requesting to take full control over the rest of the Outer Rim worlds. They suggested it because it would be something to save Tatooine from going under, especially since the Empire wasn't doing anything to help with that. So within a number of weeks, they were approved to take control over the majority of the Outer Rim's funding and reconstruction. The Council of Earth was originally happy about this, but it very quickly became an economic issue. Not for Earth, because all of the banks in charge of running Earth were fairly well established and put together, but the issue was that Earth got a hold of so many credits that it couldn't delegate them fairly. Because all the central funding from core worlds such as Alderaan and Corellia that had a stake in the Outer Rim was directed to send their funds directly towards Earth so that Earth could complete the job that they couldn't. The Council of Earth wanted to ensure that they didn't get greedy with it. The truth is, even if the politicians had an interest in stealing the money, there was so much money that they wouldn't even know what to do with it. Plus, the Council's payroll got extended drastically because now they had to delegate officials from districts and cities to entire planets. While Earth was well put together, they had to make sure they didn't destroy their entire economic system to take care of the Outer Rim. The Copernican system was well taken care of, especially because they had the drive yards and full support of the Empire behind them. But to become the governorship of the entire Outer Rim was actually insanity. The people of Earth didn't actually know about the Council's dealings until months afterwards, and there was a generalized fear and outrage from the population. The people always had a decent way of formulating their own opinions and getting their point across to the Council, but this time it was very evident that the Council may have gone too far. The people were fine with taking care of Tatooine, because every citizen from Earth had free access to travel to Tatooine. This was different. It was an entire sector of the galactic map. The people were even more ready to distinguish the Emperor and the Empire unable and unfit to serve the galaxy, because it seemed as if Earth had to be the one to do it. This was far from true, but in the eyes of the population, they were afraid that they were being used to do a job that someone else didn't want. Though there was a genuine benefit to this line of work for the population, the people of Earth would still have the ability to travel freely to any other planet in the Outer Rim, including the tropical destination that was Tatooine. So more or less, the people of Earth, after getting over their outrage, supported it, because it only meant the luxury the Copernican system was used to would only be amplified, as long as it was done correctly. On the other side of the galaxy, Emperor Palpatine had a real reason for giving so much power to the Council of Earth. He felt a darkness that he hadn't ever felt before, rising in the galaxy. The presence felt like the galaxy worth of power coming from the far reaches of space towards his galaxy, and he was honestly afraid. Palpatine may have done everything in his power to stay in power for half a century, but the truth is, nothing scared him like this tremor he felt through the Force. It sent chills down his back and it put nightmares into his mind every night. Every night he could see everything, a menace of great power with so many loyalists crossing the galaxy and leaving it in ruin. While yes, Sidious was a Sith Lord, and all he wanted was carnage, he stopped those ways of the Sith because he achieved what no Sith in the galaxy was able to do. Of course, Palpatine had no issue with glassing Mandalore and any other rebellious system in his free time, but it wasn't a weekly activity. It was rare, very rare, and the few planets that stood up to the Empire were silenced so quickly, he never got the chance to relish in their suffering. But Sidious was more interested in managing the longevity of his reign, especially since at the moment he had no pupil. Though Palpatine wasn't exactly enchanted with the idea of having a pupil and the idea of doing something he hadn't done in nearly a century, it crossed his mind. Palpatine could influence the Force and the midichlorians to create life. Palpatine had so many years since the death of Plagueis to come up with a way to do it by himself, and he hadn't really thought about doing it until the betrayal of Mara Jade, considering he believed that she would be the rightful successor to his empire. So, what if the rightful successor of his empire was his creation? Of course, a vessel created through the Force, just like that of Anakin Skywalker. Though Palpatine this time around knew how to concentrate the life to where and when he wanted it, so it wouldn't be some wild chase across the galaxy to find and discover the child if need be. Though it wasn't exactly at the forefront of his mind, he spent time inside of his throne room developing the life that he would create, but his focus was gone. Because his presence entering the galaxy, it took his mind away from everything. The presence crossed his mind and made his head ache so badly. The only way Palpatine was able to escape it was through the world between worlds, though Palpatine didn't really want to mess with the world between worlds because he was afraid that he would mess up his perfect little galaxy. So Palpatine, using the Force, would spend time and choose a random donor out of one of the maids that worked inside of his palace, and she would become the giver of life to the son or daughter of Palpatine. Of course, thanks to the power of the Force. On Earth, the Council was dividing its budget and trying to figure out how it would combat the other issues in the Outer Rim. There was an issue facing the Council of Earth, because as their bank accounts began to fill up, there was a massive fear of their markets exploding because of inflation. The value of the galactic credit on Earth would become so invaluable because of how many credits were circulating around, and so similarly to how it was done before, the Council sent out recruits to the Outer Rim inside of newly constructed vessels to oversee each of the projects, all of these recruits coming from the Imperial Academy at Zenzal. On another note, all the people who lost their money gambling on Tatooine would be hired for cheap work and sent across the Outer Rim to work on infrastructure projects. On another note, the Outer Rim budget would be directed a little towards the reconstruction of the Supremacy, which had finally docked at the Saturn drive yards after months of it slowly propelling its way from Earth to Saturn. Only 2 of the engines on the entire engine block were functional, and the ship was too critically damaged to jump to light speed, so it had to inch its way forward towards the drive yards at Saturn. While spending all these credits was positive, there was still an issue, and the issue was how little the budget was decreasing. They had so many credits that they needed to spend them as fast as they could, and Earth was much too luxurious to take in the amount of credits sitting inside the Copernican reserve. The Council also knew they couldn't just throw the money at the broadside of a star cruiser because the money would just be wasted. Because if they spent all their money on infrastructure in Nal Hutta, then they would lose valuable money needed to construct spaceports and air conditioning systems for Abeloth. The trouble for the Council was helping each of these star systems with a feasible way to build their economy without the Copernican system. Had this been done by a galaxy-wide Senate, it would have been much easier and much more useful. The Council began to really have an issue with Palpatine because they were doing what he and his advisors should have been doing. It troubled them a lot, especially with the stress of inflation on their minds, because if the galactic credit became too invaluable on Earth, their millennia-old system would crumble instantly. Earth never had an issue with inflation because of how its system was built off the galactic-wide funding coming in from the Republic. Though a singular planet funding an entire sector of the galactic map was unheard of, Earth was in a make-or-break phase, and right now it wasn't looking positive. The Council began constructing new programs simply to waste credits. For example, out of nowhere came the Ryloth Ocean Association, something that doesn't work too well for a planet with no oceans. Or, for another example, the Geonosian Mining Covenant. Why was it called a covenant? Because they ran out of names and they needed something to throw money at. And why was it a mining operation on Geonosis? Well, hopefully because it would become sustainable for future Geonosian economy. Though through all of the work that Earth was doing, they began to uncover certain issues that they didn't support the Empire doing. Like when a protocol droid revealed that the Empire had genocided the entire population of Geonosis at one point or another. The deep, dirty secrets of the Empire were becoming unveiled to the Council of Earth, and they weren't exactly fond of that happening. This also led Earth to Mandalore, where a young Mandalorian man by the name of Din Djarin sat atop a throne of ashes. He held a magic sword that the former warrior society worshipped or whatever, and the people of Earth discovered the downfall of a once prideful civilization. While Din had been the leader for nearly a decade, his people were still struggling, due to a multitude of attempts to steal his magic sword. The Council of Earth took it upon themselves to throw money at Mandalore. Why? Because why not? While the Council began to doubt who their beloved Emperor was, he was on a mission of his own. He'd begun the creation of his first life since Anakin, and was now inside of his shuttle heading towards the main fleet stationed over Coruscant. In that fleet he would enter a ship called the Eclipse. It was a powerhouse ship modeled after the Death Star with a super laser that too could rip through planets and through ships. Palpatine wanted this because the Death Star sat quietly over Scarif and was silently stationed and maintained until it was genuinely needed. And while one could profess its need during the Jade Insurgency, the Death Star was far too slow to make it from Scarif to Earth to defend the planet from the Supremacy. Everything worked out anyways, so it was no harm, no foul. Palpatine, on the other hand, deployed the main defense fleet from Coruscant out to the far reaches of space towards the Kessel Run. This was a 20-parsec hyperspace route near the Arkandes Maelstrom, and Palpatine was feeling called to go there, and so the fleet was deployed from its comfortable location over Coruscant towards Kessel. Palpatine explicitly mentioned that he didn't want to enter the hyperspace route or the Maelstrom. He just wanted to be close to it because he had visions of it. Of course, he told the crew that it was a routine expedition. While they really had no clue what that meant, they just accepted it because he was the Emperor. The Emperor's fleet was comprised of 10 Resurgent-class Star Destroyers, 15 Imperial 2-star destroyers, the Eclipse, numerous support vessels, and 2 supporting Dominator-class Star Destroyers, which housed a number of support vessels including hundreds of wings of TIE Defenders, translating into thousands upon thousands of TIE Defenders. The Emperor's fleet was stacked, and it was the exact reason that the Jade Insurgency avoided coming to Coruscant like it was the plague. Admiral Thrawn was with his fleet as well, commanding the Chimera as he always did. Though the Chimera had seen many upgrades, many of which came after the victory over Earth while Thrawn was stationed there. Regardless, the fleet arrived at a hyperspace. Everything was silent. Of course it was space. Palpatine was sleeping and he was jolted from his slumber like he had never had been before, and he moved from his bed like a man possessed by fear. He'd never felt this in his life and he knew what it was. The worst force the galaxy could ever come across that wasn't him. The stakes were the highest they'd ever been, and Palpatine needed his men to be at their best. Palpatine made his way to the bridge and ordered the Admiral to have every weapon on every vessel ready, to have every pilot on every ship ready. The Admiral was confused, but he was better than to question the judgment of the Emperor. When the Admiral was just a boy, Palpatine had just become Chancellor, and it was so thrilling for him to be standing beside him as a grown man, serving the greatest leader in the history of the galaxy. The Admiral called out an order to everyone across the deck, and then signaled to the other vessels in the fleet to get ready. Grand Admiral Thrawn, who technically outranked the Admiral on the Eclipse, took the order in and relayed the order elsewhere. The Admiral on the Eclipse was ranked higher than Thrawn only because the Emperor was on his vessel giving out the orders, though Thrawn had complete strategic control over the entire operation. Regardless, waves upon waves of TIE Defenders started up their engines and powered on their heavy weapons. Everything stayed silent. Palpatine stood at the edge of the bridge with his eyes closed, hearing the sounds of something so large. Moments later, Palpatine's eyes shot open to the sight of not a fleet, but the legendary beast known to many as the Mother, but to others who know of her legend, Abeloth, the Chaos Bringer. Palpatine screamed out in terror, demanding everything fire on her immediately. The entire Coruscant defense fleet fired on Abeloth, and within minutes, she vanished. The Admiral ordered the fleet to stop firing, feeling a sense of relief that the terrible beast had vanished. Half a second later, that relief passed through his body as he watched one of the Imperial 2-star destroyers explode from the inside out. Men, debris, and vessels were thrown from the ship in a multitude of directions. Thrawn stood on his bridge, and a chill ran down his spine as he locked eyes with Abeloth. Her glare stopped him in his tracks. Thrawn had never been so scared in his life until he met her stare. The two of them locked eyes as she vanished again, and another Star Destroyer ripped apart. The Admiral of the Eclipse asked Palpatine for orders as the Sith Lord stumbled over his words. He turned back and demanded that the fleet split up and fire on her. The Admiral called out the order across all ships, as Grand Admiral Thrawn fell to his knees, his eyes motionless and his skin stone cold. The captain on deck ordered the ship around, as she ordered for medical assistance to be brought to Thrawn. The captain on deck saw this as her moment for a promotion, but she watched as the Star Destroyer on her port side ripped apart, and the captain from the ship's body slammed across the glass of the Star Destroyer's bridge. The fleet dispersed as vessels tried to get a clear shot on Abeloth, but she was too quick to disappear as well. Another Star Destroyer and then a Resurgence class ripped apart from the inside out. Terror could be felt at the heart and souls of the people inside of every single vessel, and instead of feeding off of it, Palpatine was limited by it, because he too was in fear for his life. The Admiral of the Eclipse suggested to the Emperor that they divide their forces and retreat immediately, until Imperial intelligence could come up with a solution. Palpatine nodded his head, and the fleet dispersed in any direction to escape Abeloth as they could. As the ships escaped, Abeloth revealed herself and focused in on Palpatine's spirit and locked onto him. She knew that he was the biggest threat in the galaxy to her rule, and so she would follow him through space until she could kill him herself, though she would rampage everything she came across until she got to him. Palpatine ended up taking a hyperspace route from Kessel that passed through Kamino to Tatooine, and then from Tatooine past a number of planets to Earth. He believed with the supremacy present on Earth, it would be the safest location to be. He also ordered the admiral of his fleet to dispatch the Death Star to the Copernican system to be used as a defense station in any case they were followed. Palpatine, knowing Abeloth locked onto him, would have to lure her into this trap. Over the period of a couple weeks, the planets in the way of Abeloth would suffer. The powerful Outer Rim world of Tatooine would crumble. With less than 20 years in the spotlight as a tropical destination in the Outer Rim, it returned to desolation within 24 hours. Many other planets were also ripped apart and filled with the dead of billions. The sight was horrific, and it plagued the galaxy as news spread like wildfire. Though the scariest thing was that no one knew what was happening. On Earth, they watched their pride of the Outer Rim shatter into shambles and be ripped apart by a goth girl with an ego problem. Palpatine and his defense fleet had been stationed outside of Earth for a good week and a half, with the Death Star eventually present. Of course, with the local crumbling of planets across the Outer Rim, and now the Mid-Rim, Earth's market was crashing and the economy was almost in shambles, as people buckled down for the worst. Though there was something very odd to the people of Earth. While yes, Palpatine had the supremacy and the Eclipse stationed outside of Earth, just a little beyond the gravitational pull of the planet was a moon-sized object. A representative from the Council of Earth investigated it to find out that the Empire had constructed a super weapon powerful enough to destroy an entire planet. This immediately caused issues with the Council of Earth. They didn't realize that their resources from the Saturn drive yards had gone to such a vile weapon. No news of this had broke out across the planet. The people were very aware that the Emperor was stationed on the planet, though. Grand Admiral Thrawn took over control of the supremacy and the entire fleet after rerouting the majority of the fleet to Coruscant and taking himself to Earth to defend the Emperor. Palpatine was stationed in the capital at Zhenzhou, close to an Imperial Academy, the same place the Council usually put Palpatine when he visited. Though Palpatine could feel Abeloth and feel that she was close, she may have actually been. And then a news feed popped up over his communicator. It was Abeloth. She had struck in Thebes. She had disappeared under the surface of the planet after leveling the entire city. Palpatine growled as he stormed out of the room, instructing everyone to move their forces to the city mentioned on the news. Palpatine requested to have a vessel then take him to the grand city of Giza. The man questioned why Palpatine wanted to go there, but Palpatine shushed him and made his way for the vessel. At Thebes, elite units of Imperial stormtroopers, called Death Troopers, made their way around the wreckage. Earth's elite defense forces prepared their entire lives for this, and they scavenged the ruins of Thebes, looking for Abeloth. She had torn the entire ancient city apart, killing 3.5 million people, travelers, and outsiders who called one of the original capitals of Earth home. 3,000 years of history vanished because Abeloth, and for all of the Imperial Defense Force, especially those from Earth, this was personal. As they stepped over bodies in the decay of city structures that had been torn apart just moments before, they crawled down into a cavern made below the city. The cavern seemed as if it could go on forever. The stormtroopers were searching and searching with no ability to find the beast. At Giza, Palpatine's shuttle landed after only a short trip from Zhenzhou. Palpatine exited the ship and walked away from the main city through the desert. He could feel Abeloth coming towards his location. The people of Earth were fortunate that the Jedi had once called this planet home. When they were forced to call this place home long ago, they left artifacts. When the Republic returned, so did the Jedi, and they left a gift here in Giza for the people of Earth. And Palpatine was going to use that gift to defeat this terrible monster. Palpatine stepped forward and looked at the Sphinx, and before his eyes the ancient statue was ripped apart as Palpatine fell to his back. TIE defenders stationed in Giza lifted off into the air as they sped towards the Sphinx, which was now ripped in half. Palpatine got back to his feet as TIE defenders rained in from the skies, being ripped apart as they got close to Abeloth. Palpatine closed his eyes and ignited the force from the 3 pyramids, and they began to slowly crack open. Abeloth turned around and noticed it as she spun back towards Sidious, shooting electricity with the heat of 1,000 suns towards the ancient Sith Lord. Palpatine gasped as he opened his eyes, realizing he should have just used the Death Star to blow up Earth, but before the lightning could reach him, he saw Abeloth scream. Her cry was audible to the entire planet as she was sucked back in towards the Great Pyramids of Giza. Palpatine was holding out his hand to defend himself from the electricity, but it shot back into Abeloth's face as she was drawn into a container met in the middle of the 3 Great Pyramids. Sidious looked over and looked down to see a small container with the logo of the Jedi on it. Under the logo was a saying in the ancient dialect of the Jedi, "The Force I am with me is the Force." Palpatine grabbed the chamber with the Force and pulled it into his hands. It was a small, ancient Egyptian vase, and it was elegantly sculpted with the beauty of an ancient Earth civilization and that of the Jedi. Palpatine took the container so that Abeloth could never escape. While the carnage had been stopped and peace had returned to the galaxy, there was a larger issue for Palpatine. One of the leading representatives of power in the galaxy had an issue with the recently discovered Death Star, the weapon that went against everything the Council of Earth stood for. Though there was a bright side to both ends of the spectrum. For the people of Earth, they would have to decide if they wanted to participate in the grander empire, but on another note, they finally had a place to put all their money. It wasn't really actually that positive, but it would keep their economy from becoming inflated. When Palpatine returned the Zenzal, there were celebrations in the street. People were so happy that the power of Abeloth came to an end at the planet of Earth. And of course they were able to survive not just Abeloth but the Jade Insurgency within the span of a couple of months. The pride of Earth was now the pride of the Empire, as the Empire began to rejoice over the second major victory on Earth within the same period of time. And while Palpatine was responsible for this victory, his leadership was now in question, because when he returned to Zenzal alongside the cheers and excitement of triumph was the questions of loyalty, especially coming from a council of leaders who had just maintained higher stress levels than anyone else of the entire Empire since the Clone Wars. While victory was fine and all and even exciting, the people of Earth had an issue with the yellow brick road that led from Kessel to Earth, trailing Palpatine and Abeloth back home, and the construction of a super weapon no one knew was created until now. Palpatine could feel the changing tides. The question remained, would Earth become a new rebellion in the face of Abeloth, or would the greater Empire itself become disbanded into 2 different sections like the Republic had before the Clone Wars? Surely it could happen. The Copernican system guarded the greater power and support of the galaxy. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is part 5 of 6 of our story. Again, special thanks to Benjamin Wells, Jonathan, Pimp Daddy, Bane, Darth, Cheesy, Apollo, Mad Manny Studios, Anakin 003, Lemon Knight, Flynn Van Cease, and Lord Deadwing for supporting the channel. Hit 2,000 likes on this video. I don't know what's coming next, but it is. If you want to see a what if, let me know below. Radar accounts, but on dual crossovers. Check out the Twitch, community Discord, Patreon, and podcast if you want to support me in other ways. The Twitch is streaming daily nowadays. That's something that's happening. The podcast has videos going up. There's going to be an interview coming out every other week. The first one's going to be me. If you have questions you want to ask me, go to the community tab and write on there what you want to ask me. I will be announcing guests for the podcast whenever I have new guests coming on. And let's talk about this part of the story real quick. So, you guys thought the Vong was coming in this story. You know, I like leaving you guys in suspense. Is the Vong coming next story? You never know. I guess you'll have to wait till you see the thumbnail. I'm really excited about this story. This story is a lot of fun. I mean, I'm really having a lot of fun with it. And I really can't wait to do our next mini-series. And I'm not even talking about the next Earth mini-series. I'm talking about our next mini-series. I just started working on writing that, but this was fun because I get to have fun with Palpatine in this one. Like, I know constant complaint is like, oh, I don't like give Palpatine enough credit. It's like, no, I give him credit. He's just the only villain ever, so I kind of have to make him dumb sometimes because he's the only villain ever, other than the sequels, you know? And so that lasts for, you know, a movie and a half until you realize, oh, it's not, because of the Rise of Sky guys. So, like, this is really fun for me because I get to have fun with Palpatine being like the cool bad guy that like doesn't mess up all the time ever. And so I'm really excited to have fun with that. But now he made a boo-boo and we get to explore that in the next episode. I'm telling you, this finale is going to be a grand finale. You better get your popcorn ready because it's going to be amazing. Otherwise, I don't really have much else to say. Go check out the podcast, check out the Twitch. I stream daily between 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. Central Time Standard. I'm in Central Time. I don't know what I think it's CST. I just moved into this time zone, so I don't really know what the acronym is. Otherwise, check out the podcast, all that stuff. Pride of the Empire merch, all that stuff down below. Anyways, I love you all. Spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.